You're listening to the B Fox and B Frank show. Week one of college football has come and gone. We can now officially say football is back.
And Texas is not.
No, they are not. We can start there. So back-to-back years now, Texas has wanted to be back so very badly in the preseason, and then week one, despite so very many things working against them, Maryland just punches a huge hole right through that plan.
It was one of those games where it looked like Texas just couldn't find their footing right away. And as the game went on, you just kept expecting, okay, they're finally going to figure it out. They're finally going to put it together. And Maryland just kept making plays. Kasim Hill was actually really good, but Jayshon Jones, that's his last name, was incredible. Just like the definition of a playmaker throughout that first half.
Yeah, what a college debut that is. Jayshon Jones threw for, ran for, and caught a touchdown pass. And Maryland's obviously at a talent disadvantage, and the weather did play a factor in not allowing Texas to find its literal footing. But this is just pretty inexcusable if you're Texas. Losing the interim head coach Matt Canada, never a good thing.
That's the worst look of it all. Like if you break everything down, it's like Ed Orgeron didn't even want this guy running his offense, let alone his team, and he beats Tom Herman with significantly less talent.
Yeah, also not really a good look for Tom Herman, like coaching Wiz. He's really got his work cut out for him to get back to that point. Even when he was back at Houston, we kind of talked about, all right, he's good at getting his team up for these big games against teams where they might be a little overmatched. We even saw that last year with how well Texas played the likes of USC, Oklahoma, but then would struggle against, like now, the likes of teams like Maryland. Not much has changed for him in that regard. You would like to think Texas might turn it around, but at this point, I feel like we're just giving them far too much credit until they actually prove that they can do it on the field.
Yeah, and I don't think you can really say they need to wait for the talent to get there because I think they have it. I don't know what it is that needs to click. I don't know if it's quarterback play because Ehlinger wasn't great, but he certainly wasn't, like Shea Patterson bad.
Yeah, he's still a bit of a gunslinger to a fault in terms of not always the best decision making. But again, this is not a Maryland team loaded with studs. Should have been not like a blowout or anything, but fairly straightforward work, even playing de facto road games. So, it's hard to spin many positives out of this one from a Texas perspective.
Yeah, I have nothing positive for the Longhorns other than they don't have to ever play Maryland again if they don't want to.
Yeah. It was tough for me, just like last year. It's like, maybe Maryland won't suck this year. So that's not great. But we'll see. The actual one of the two big games from Saturday, Notre Dame, Michigan. It finished up just a one touchdown margin for Notre Dame, but I really don't think it ever truly felt that close.
There was a little bit of sweating towards the end, Michigan getting the ball back. Like, not that their offense had a chance, but I've seen Notre Dame play so many games where they seemingly have it in the bag and then the team scores a couple late touchdowns and all of a sudden they're in overtime. But the defense, how damn good is the defense? What they did on Saturday was incredible. And before we go on and on about the defense, I think Brandon Wimbush, what he showed in the first half is better than any game he has played as a Notre Dame quarterback. Like, plain and simple. He was better, I think, in that half than DeShone Kizer's best game.
Yeah, and his numbers won't blow anybody off the page, but he always seemed to be in control of the game. And that's not always something you could say last year, especially going up against a defense as good as Michigan right off the bat, led them on a touchdown drive that really set the tone, made Michigan's defense look very weak. There was just no resistance offered. And I think that gave him a good amount of confidence to continue the game because, as we've said, he has lost so much from his supporting cast from last year to the NFL. It'd be easy for someone in his position to be a little unsure of himself, not sure where the help's going to come from, maybe put a little too much pressure on himself, try to do everything himself. But I mean, outside of the one turnover, really, I mean, pretty clean game by his standards.
Yeah, and the offensive line was decent, which was nice. I mean, obviously Michigan's got one of the better pass rushes in the country, but they did well enough to give him pockets to throw. And like you said, he looked incredibly poised throughout the game. No moment seemed too big for him, which is leaps and bounds better than he was last year. The problem I see right now with Notre Dame is we kind of hit on it, but there's no standout playmaker in the receiving core. And at least against Michigan, there was no run game. Jafar Armstrong had 2 touchdowns, but they were both inside like 10 or 15 yards, and they were Ian Book handoffs. So I don't know if that is Michigan playing towards a pass or what the deal was.
Yeah, and maybe those questions will be answered a little more when they go up against, the Ball States and Vanderbilts of the world, who aren't quite at the level of Michigan's defense. Maybe they won't, but I would expect someone will at least assert themselves as the season goes on. Guys get more experience with those first team reps. But yeah, not really any of that in game 1 against Michigan. On the flip side, I mean, exactly what we said with Shea Patterson. The numbers do look a little better on paper than Wimbush's, but
yep,
the tweet I sent you from Pat 40, just right off the bat, Michigan did everything except opening it up. 5 handoffs and a bubble screen, and Notre Dame's defense was just controlling everything. And if you have a guy as talented as Shea Patterson purports to be, I don't know why you don't give him a little more opportunity to show that, unless they were really worried about how good Notre Dame's defense was.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, can we pause?
Yep, go ahead.
Hey.
I had to mute you, so unmute it at the top. There we go. Michigan, right?
I think.
Let's see. I'm just gonna jump into it. If it makes sense, it makes sense. If it doesn't, Here we go. I think the biggest thing moving forward is going to be the battle between Jim Harbaugh trying to force his offense on Shea Patterson and Shea Patterson's natural ability to play, because he wasn't bad when he was in a moving pocket or rolling out on the run and throwing the ball. He didn't necessarily run the ball well, but on the move, he threw the ball better than expected, or I guess as advertised. But Harbaugh continues to try and force this pro style under center I formation pounding run, and then occasionally, hey, we'll run a spread type play.
Yeah, he's always going to be run first, like no matter who his quarterback is, it seems like. And
right.
With most Michigan teams he's had, he can kind of get away with it. Even this one, Higdon is a hell of a back, but I mean the whole point of them recruiting Shea Patterson to come from Ole Miss, come to Michigan, is to kind of transform the quarterback position that they had. The sort of guys they had back there who were more game managers than guys who are actually going to go out and be like huge difference makers or stars. And I mean, that, like you said, it's going to be the internal struggle that he's going to have to deal with. But yeah, one game, not so great. And again, a lot of credit needs to go to Notre Dame's defense for their hand in that too.
Yeah, the front seven, really the front three for Notre Dame, were unbelievably disruptive all night. Michigan's offensive line is going to be a huge question mark throughout the season.
Yeah, it's kind of hard figuring out where. I mean, like, again, it is only one game, but where Michigan kind of stacks up in the rest of the Big Ten. The Big Ten East as a whole really didn't look that strong. Michigan State struggled against Utah State. Penn State struggled against Appalachian State. So, I mean, nobody really had that great of a showing except for Ohio State. So maybe that's something to take solace in if you're Michigan. But, yeah, this is a pretty flat-looking performance, at least offensively.
For sure. Definitely not what was advertised with Shea Patterson, at least.
No, certainly not. The lower scoring game, although not as surprising, Auburn-Washington. Washington basically playing a road game, coming up just short. A lot of missed opportunities in the red zone, but Auburn ends up taking it 21-16. Huge blow to the Pac-12, but a huge boost for Jarrett Stidham in that Auburn offense.
Yeah, they played well against a really good defense. That is probably the biggest takeaway, and they did it without much of a run game. Cam Martin had 80 yards, but it wasn't anything game-breaking or game-changing. It was really Stidham they went to time and time again when they needed a big play, and he was able to come through. The defense played really well, I thought. Obviously, if you can hold a good offense like Washington to 4 scores in 6 red zone appearances, 3 of those being field goals, you're doing something right. But at the end of the day, this game was more lost by Washington than won by Auburn, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of yards gained. There just weren't points put on the board once they got into the red zone. I mean, Jake Brown still threw for just under 300 yards. Washington did start very slowly offensively, but eventually it seemed like they kind of got over the jitters, figured it out a little bit, and started moving the ball pretty well against Auburn. But once the field kind of tightened, they got close to the goal line, that's when just repeatedly shooting themselves in the foot did not really help matters much. Especially defense like Auburn can't leave points on the table. And I mean, that's a learning experience. Washington will basically have to run the table now. Very possible that they do, because I think they are clearly the most talented team in the Pac-12. but I mean, it's certainly not going to be an easy task. We think Stanford, in particular, is going to mount a significant challenge, but big missed opportunity for them. For Auburn, really gives themselves a safety net of sorts if they do stumble somewhere along the line, because this is pretty much as good a win as anyone in the country has right now.
Yeah, it's I mean, and not to be overlooked, Auburn's kicker missed 2 field goals as well, so this could have easily been, double-digit game. But I mean, that's the story of it. Their defense played well. Jarrett Stidham proved that he is the best quarterback in the SEC, and that Auburn can rely on him to make the big plays, which is essentially what Gus Malzahn had been missing for the past couple of years since Nick Marshall, maybe. I don't even know if you can consider him really the reliable playmaker, but I guess before that would have to be Cam, which was Gene Chizik.
He was pretty good at football. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Gene Chizik won a natty. People forget that.
They do.
Yeah, but SEC rules again, basically. And kind of leading into the next game, LSU. Huge statements were made by the winning teams in the sort of standalone games. Sunday night, it was LSU. Lot of question marks. The offensive line was really getting torn apart from the beginning, but I mean, not really much to say other than this was an utter destruction of Miami.
Coach O had the boys ready to play. I don't know what it was. Nick Brossette is a dude in that backfield. He obviously established himself as the go-to guy. He spent time backing up both Darius Geis and Leonard Fournette, so he's learned from 2 pretty good running backs and now gets the chance to show what he's got, and he definitely did that in spades. But Joe Burrow, his numbers weren't great, but he is significantly better than a quarterback LSU has had in a long while.
Yeah, we'll see. I think that's the Joe Burrow. Very, very good performance considering the circumstances. Going up against turnover chain defense, returning most of its back 7, even with the early targeting ejection. For a guy who joined the program super late as it is, even for a transfer, I mean, it's about as good a showing as you can expect. Obviously, Brossette, 125 yards, 2 tutties, a lot of the heavy lifting on the ground. Defense really did its part, shutting down. I mean, Rozier looked awful. I mean, and Miami just kept handing them short field after short field, just a non-existent punt game, which is not really something you hear a lot in major college football, but I mean, that's kind of what it was. Even this one, LSU ended up winning by 16. That was due to Miami making some noise in garbage time, really never that close. So a resounding victory for LSU. Yet another one in Jerry World where they have been quite successful over the last few years.
The defense is really good for LSU. I mean, Miami's, I think, is also very good still. They just weren't able to force turnovers, and that's their whole game. The turnover chain doesn't come out, Miami's probably not going to win the game, no matter who they're playing.
Couple fake outs in the early going.
Yeah.
Two thought turnovers going back, and I mean, for a lot of neutral parties, that was deflating. I imagine the same for Miami, who, I mean, that's such a boost for morale, just to get the turnover chain out. So, I mean, to have that potentially and then ripped away can't feel great. But, I mean, the offense just did absolutely nothing to help the cause, which we said last week could potentially be an issue if they're asking the defense to do too much. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah, there's really not much on this offense outside of East St. Louis product Jeff Thomas, who was, I thought, the best player on the field, not named Nick Brossette.
Yeah, I mean, the cupboard isn't there, and it is overreaction season.
Yes.
So it's very easy to look at this and say Mark Richt has lost control of the program already after one game. Especially
don't forget that they're on a losing streak now.
I was gonna say, especially looking at how they ended last season. Not that season to season momentum is really a thing, but it can be for narrative purposes. Miami needs a W pretty badly. A statement in a big way. This was not it, and now, the division title that seemed like they would have a pretty good shot to win now becomes a little more in doubt. Their performance, coupled with a very impressive performance Monday night from Virginia Tech in Florida State's house. Thanks. Beamer ball is back.
Oh yeah.
Five forced turnovers held Florida State to just 3 points. Just an unbelievable and suffocating performance from the Hokies.
This is exactly what I expected. And by that, I mean it was nothing like what I expected. I thought this was going to be the Josh Jackson show. I thought he was going to go off, dominate a bad Florida State defense. And Florida State's defense actually looked pretty good. Much like Miami, Florida State kept giving Virginia Tech short fields, and the defense kept making plays, which we haven't really seen in the past couple of seasons from the Seminoles, but good God, for an offensive-minded coach like Willie Taggart, that offense was brutally bad. And some of the play calling was just horrendous. The full house backfield wildcat on a 3rd and goal following an 85-yard run by Cam Akers was one of the worst decisions I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, they just kind of outthought themselves at certain points. And again, like Miami, there's no shortage of athletes on Florida State's roster, which is always going to lend itself to pretty solid defensive play. But, out of any ranked or so-called top team in the country, they looked the most like it was their very first game of the season. It was just such a sloppy game. Just handing gifts on a platter to Virginia Tech at every turn. And like you said, right when it seemed like they might have a glimmer of hope, they just give the ball right back to Virginia Tech deep in Hokie territory. And yeah, we were talking about kind of the reaction to Willie Taggart's first game at Florida State. It's probably going to be strong either way. They're very positive or very negative. We are on the very negative end of the spectrum because this did
about as bad as it could get.
This did not look like a well-coached or just coached at all football team.
This is kind of what you expect. Like people expect out of Coach O. Just team that looks ready to play because Florida State was hype. The sideline was going nuts. I thought they were going to get a penalty before the game. And then they just get punched in the mouth, and then they just sat down and took it the rest of the game outside of that 85-yard run. But it was a 17-3 game at that point. There was a very real chance that we had a game on our hands, and then just Virginia Tech's defense buckled in and knocked them out.
Yeah, and you end the game with the entire opposing team and their fans tomahawk chopping you in your stadium. That's about as bad a visual as you can get. So, this is a burn the tape game for Florida State. This was pretty dang brutal all around. Not much else to say other than that.
There's really nothing else other than it can't get worse. Francois, I feel bad for DeAndre Francois because he was so excited to get back and after that injury, some people question whether he ever would be able to get back, and he just played so poorly. He looks so rusty.
Yeah, and like you said last week, that was a big question mark to me. Quarterback play for Florida State. Josh Jackson, for his part, didn't make mistakes, and the defense took care of the rest. He took advantage of short fields when they were given to him. Finished up with 2 touchdowns, but yeah, Virginia Tech is is very much a threat to win the ACC.
They were my pick. I'm just gonna leave it out there. They were my pick. People may forget that.
People probably do forget that. It was a long time ago. The last big story from week 1, Bama still going with the 2 quarterback system. Tua is absurd, for lack of a better word. Just looked like
he's mayhem.
Looked probably the best quarterback in college football against Louisville. He was pretty dang dominant. Hurts off the bench accounted for 79 yards of his own. Saban, his feathers were a bit ruffled post game when he was asked about it. So we have technically no more clarity than we did preseason, but I mean it seems pretty obvious that Tua is the better quarterback for this team.
Yeah, and we in that first quarter we really saw what Tua can bring to the table. Seemingly broken play. He's running legitimately in circles and just throws the ball up to a wide open receiver for a touchdown. Like just an unreal play in that. Nick Saban was probably like, what the fuck did I get myself into as the ball, as he sees him wind up to throw, and then he catches it, and then obviously Nick Saban doesn't smile, but he, on the inside, is like, thank God. It's kind of like Harbaugh with Shea Patterson. It's such a contrasting style of how Nick Saban wants to play, but Saban will actually let Tua go out and play his own game. Meanwhile, both coaches want a guy like Jalen Hurts who will just run the ball a little bit, protect it. They won't turn it over. They'll run your offense, do everything they can. And it's very conflicting, I think, for Saban. And that's part of the reason why he doesn't want to name Tua the outright starter, even though everybody knows he is, because the offense just has that much more upside with him. But, I mean, he does come with the risk of turnovers. We saw on a scramble that he fumbled. The ground caused the fumble, but he's certainly more prone to turnovers than Jalen Hurts is in the very small sample size we have of him.
Yeah, I mean, and even that play you described, that was fairly lucky that it ended up the way he did. Generally speaking, just throwing the ball up won't always work out that well, so he's a little more reckless, if you will.
Yeah.
But there's no denying the talent, not to disparage Jalen Hurts in the slightest, who is a very, very good quarterback. His track record speaks for itself. I mean, he is one of the best quarterbacks that Saban has ever had at Alabama, and Tua is just on an additional level from that. I'm
a huge Jalen Hurts guy. I would be very happy to have him on my favorite college football team, which changes by the week. But if I were a coach, I'd be very happy to have him in my program.
Yeah, it's not a bad time to be Nick Saban.
Right.
Not that it really ever is in football season. So week 1 in the books. Not a lot of intrigue for week 2 right now. That will surely change once the games are playing. We've got 2 ranked matchups, both conference Power 5 games. We've got Georgia, who didn't really face much resistance from the fighting governors of Austin Peay, going to South Carolina.
Stunning.
Yeah. Who could have seen that coming?
The Ohio Valley Power.
Who are you liking, Georgia at South Carolina?
You got to go Georgia. I think South Carolina's a good team. I think they'll be in the rankings throughout the season, and I think this will be a good chance for them to show what kind of talent they've got. We talked about Deebo Samuel in our preview. He's an unbelievably talented player. Defense, per usual, under Will Muschamp is going to be good, but they just don't have enough offensive firepower to beat out this Georgia team. And with seemingly another team with a two-headed beast at quarterback with Jake Fromm, who also doesn't really turn the ball over, and Justin Fields, this team is going to be very tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the SEC East is improved significantly, but I do feel like every season we have rotating like fringe top 25 teams in the East outside of Georgia. Like Florida is somehow 25th this week. Got South Carolina at 24. Being at home helps.
Yeah.
But Georgia is an absolute monster. Like, if Alabama didn't exist, especially in the same conference, we would be probably talking about this Georgia roster with the same just awestruck tones. And I mean, the big question mark coming into the year is kind of who would really take the reins of the run game. Not really going to get that answer against Austin Peay, who's kind of the three-headed monster of Cook, Swift, and Holyfield. But I mean,
which is a great law firm name, by the way. All time.
Yeah. Just got that 8.6 yards per carry as a team, which is always pretty good. But yeah, I think it's going to be way too much for South Carolina on top of what Georgia can already throw at you that we know very well. So yeah, got to go with the Dogs too.
Yeah, I mean, again, this will be a fun one because I don't think a lot of people are expecting or know a lot about South Carolina, so it'll be a good game to kind of get under your belt for when they play Florida later in the season and, whatever other crossover game they will have in the West, because the West is always pretty good.
We were promised more scoring this year from South Carolina through one game against the former baseball national champions, Coastal Carolina. That shone through, but I mean, Georgia's a different animal. This will be a real test to see how much this Will Muschamp offense has actually improved. I mean, obviously, they'll go a long way in South Carolina asserting themselves nationally or not. So a lot to look forward to here. It'll be an unbelievably raucous environment there. The other game, USC, Stanford. USC new quarterback JT Daniels had a pretty solid, if unspectacular, debut against UNLV. Stanford took down San Diego State. Bryce Love had a very forgettable game, but I'm sure he will get up a little more for this big opponent on a big stage. Who are you liking in this one?
Yeah, it was I didn't get to see too much of the USC game, but from all accounts, JT Daniels performed well. He got better as the game went on and kind of showed what this offense was capable of. The biggest problem is they gave up 300-plus yards on the ground to UNLV. You're going up against the single best player in college football, who happens to be a running back. Does not bode well for teams. I'm going Stanford. Mix in the fact that KJ Costello was inconsistent but good when he was on, and JJ Arcega-Whiteside could be one of the best playmakers at receiver in the country this year. So I think Stanford will win this game, and I think they'll do it by double digits.
Putting the running back in running Rebels. That's going to be my spin zone for that. I took USC for this one. One of my two upsets of the week, along with the Fighting Herms of Arizona State hosting the Spartans. That was with my heart rather than my head, but love to see it, especially if week to week momentum's a thing. Yeah, I mean, Stanford is always so fundamentally sound, and they do have more talent at the skill positions than, I mean, they historically do in years not carried by Toby Gerhart. But
right,
I think USC is still going to be a different animal. JT Daniels got that college debut, got the nervousness out of the way, and now he's really going to buckle down and show why he is so highly regarded. I mean, a pedestrian game for him in week one. Still saw him throw for almost 300 yards. Granted, against UNLV, they're not going to really terrify any of college football elite. But I mean, I think this is going to be his coming out game, and even though it's on the road, I like the Trojans to pull off the mini upset.
Look at us disagreeing again.
Civilly. Yeah. Any other games you wanted to highlight week 2?
Not really. There's maybe, I mean, against Western Michigan, there are theories out there that say that the loser of these big games will come back and just throttle the weaker opponent the next week. That might be something to look for. But other than that, it was a real good week 1 for me. I was very, very happy with the results.
Yeah.
Outside of Florida Atlantic, obviously.
Who, I guess before we wrap up, who were you most impressed by in week 1 that we haven't talked
LSU.
about so far?
With that, we haven't talked about Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray was incredible. That offense is – I think Oklahoma is better this year than they were last year. That means they are better without the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, Baker Mayfield, and the number 1 pick, who I think was incredible. I think this team is better than that team. Their defense is loaded. The offense has so many weapons. Rodney Anderson carried the ball 5 times and rushed for 100 yards. Kyler Murray threw it 11 times for over 200 yards. Hollywood Brown lives up to the name. I mean, he is so much fun to watch on the outside. It's crazy how much talent this team has.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta go Will Grier, who
thank you for picking up my slack.
The preseason hype and then some.
From me.
Tennessee obviously is going to have a down year. Still an SEC defense, tore to shreds, 429 yards, 5 touchdowns. I mean, West Virginia as a whole, the offense looks like an absolute wagon. David Sills had himself a huge game as well. I mean, it is early in the season, so this is the time that West Virginia really asserts itself as an offensive juggernaut. See Geno Smith.
Yep.
But this feels a little different with someone like Will Grier. Assuming he stays healthy, this does feel like it's going to be a pretty interesting race in the Big 12. But it was a very impressive beatdown of Tennessee by West Virginia as a whole.
Yeah, my guy, I picked him preseason to win the Heisman. People also might forget that. Just want to make sure I'm going to bring this up each and every week until he inevitably loses the Heisman. But Will Grier was fantastic in the second half, more specifically. In the first half, he kind of looked like he was trying to force things. Like he knew the hype that he had, and he knew that he was supposed to be this big playmaker. And instead of going through his progressions and finding the open guy, because they have 3, I would say, all conference, if not all American receivers on their team, he didn't let them make the plays. He tried to do it himself, and that's where he ran into trouble. And then the second half, Holgerson got through to him and was just like, just go out there and play. Go through your progressions. You'll find the open guy, and then that'll make everything easier. And he was dominant.
Understandable, as he is an avid listener of this podcast. So he heard all the praise being heaped on him, feeling that a little. But yeah, it definitely seemed like it was coming a lot easier for him in the second half after they were, allowing Tennessee to kind of hang around a little bit in the first half. But
Tennessee's quarterback looked pretty good. Guarantano, or I kept calling him Guantanamo the entire afternoon because of the mix of a few too many beers and just not being able to read the white on that orange jersey. But Guarantano, he looked pretty good. He had a couple nice throws, stood in the pocket well, but Tennessee's still a little ways away.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the many challenging first-year jobs in the SEC, Jeremy Pruitt will just have to buckle up and deal with, because aren't really going to be many easy weeks.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's the show for this week. Week 2 coming up. Indiana hosting Virginia. People forget Virginia got blown out by a 16th seed in the NCAA tournament.
They did.
We'll probably tweet about that at least one time. But yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. Football is fully back. The college football world, NFL will join this week, but college football is in full swing, and it feels extremely good.
It's great. Gambling season is back, but more importantly, football season's back.